Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Welcome to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, and Dr. Paul's in the house, or at least in the state of Arizona. And we have a lot of the activists are out there. They're passing out stuff. They're participating at ASU and Hayden Lawn there. And we're going live. We got Drew out there with his goodies. So we'll go ahead and go right there so you can see what's going on. And what we're seeing on the video is just the full lawn just full, and Dr. Paul's addressing the crowd.
Rather upset, as many other Americans have, dealing with traveling at the airports and with the TSA. Now, I know there are other problems, and the other day when I gave my little talk on the House floor when I introduced legislation to deal with this, for years, decades, literally, I've been complaining about our foreign policy, the stupidity of our foreign policy and how it causes blowback. The stupidity and the weird ideas that governments can secretly print as much money as they want, and it's good economic policy. And we can spend at will and run up deficits at will and tax at will. I've complained about that for a long, long time, and they are very, very serious problems, and they have brought us to this crisis. But believe me, what's going on at the airports and what has happened just recently with these new rules, if we, as American citizens, put up with this, let me tell you, there's not much hope for us. We need to stop this tyranny at the airports. I have the little bill that I introduced, and I am famous for not writing complicated bills. This one was about one paragraph. And what it does, it addresses the subject of sovereign immunity, which is a principle that's been around a while, and it's out of control in Washington, but in particular with the airports. Now, what would happen if anybody in this crowd would do what a TSA agent does? Out in the open, go up and grope pictures and take nude pictures of people. I mean, what is going on here? You'd be arrested, you'd be put in jail, and all kinds of things. But are we going to remain complacent and say, oh, it's the government, they're allowed to do it, and they're making us safe, and therefore we have to accept it? They tell us when we go to the airport that you have to submit because you bought a ticket. And when you buy a ticket, you've given up your rights. People on national television say that and they believe it. Who ever heard of giving up your rights because you bought an airplane ticket? I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Live from ASU, Tempe, Arizona, right now in Hayden Lawn. We got the guys out there, they're quicking us.
You know, if we remove the immunity, this would solve the problem at the airport. Because you can't sue anybody. We have two rules. Government agents can do one thing, you and I can do other things. But one rule in a free society is that it isn't a free society anymore if you have different rules. If government agents can do something and they have certain rules, and people have different rules, believe me, freedom is at risk. And it isn't only at the airports where the individuals are immune from perpetuating crimes. But what about the idea of theft? Does government steal? Of course they steal. You know, if you aren't fortunate enough to have an automobile, everybody knows you can't go and steal an automobile from your neighbor because he has two automobiles. Fortunately, we still see that as theft. But they do not see it as theft if you send the congressman to steal the automobile and then he gets political points for it. When it's theft by the individual, it should be theft by the government, and they shouldn't have immunity. So what kind of trouble do you get into if you're a counterfeiter? You know, that's a serious crime. They recognized in the very early part of our history the Monetary Control Act of 1792, the Currency Control Act bill. Then they looked past that and they said no counterfeiting. And if you did counterfeit, they allowed the death penalty for counterfeiting. But here today, what do? You would go to jail if you counterfeited a federal document or a currency, which is fine and dandy. That's obviously fraud. But why are we so complacent to turn the counterfeit machine over to a few individuals, usually one, who gets to counterfeit the currency of the world, the dollar, in secrecy, and they spend it without any supervision? They ought to lose their sovereign immunity as well.
We're going to go ahead and stick with this. I know the quality audio is not great, but I know you want to listen to it.
Individuals in both parties for a good many decades now who totally ignore the Constitution and take us to war illegally, without declaration of war. Why are they allowed to do this? Why do we have a CIA that gets involved in overthrow of governments, rigging elections around the world? Then we sit back and we wonder, why do they hate us? Because we're involved and we're bombing and killing people. You know, one of the big issues going on today is the issue of torture. We now have become a nation known for torturing. Pictures have been out there early on when the Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo pictures came out. We don't see them anymore. Nobody talks about them. Torture still goes on. We farm it out to other countries. But those pictures circulate around the Muslim world. And believe me, they didn't like it. What would we think if somebody was torturing American people around the world? I mean, it would infuriate us. So what do? We found we had the information. It came up, and they suggested maybe we ought to look into it, and this administration was supposed to do that. So they started investigating. They had some evidence, and the CIA was involved. And guess what? The CIA destroyed all the evidence. And this administration will not pursue it. They've excused them and said, that's it, we can't find the evidence. There will be no prosecution. Not one single prosecution, not one challenge to people who claim that, oh no, they're not really torturing. But it was a policy. As long as torture is a policy of America, America cannot remain great.
Dr. Ron Paul at ASU, Tempe, Arizona, right now. This is... You know, I want to make sure that people understand. We'll get you some more. They're keep putting up the quicks as we go to these. You know, my thing is I'm glad he's here, and it's all the timing worked out great to where we have a lot of people that are planning for a lot of things, and it's really taken a popular route in the media here, television, radio, print. I mean, they'll start going on one side, but I tell you, the mood of the people always wins out, and they don't want to be on the wrong side. And it always comes down to money. You know, I mean, there's always something they can do somewhere, some influence. But it's really permeated the media here to where people are rising up against the man. As long as I give you an example. Being an activist for a long time, I always assume that, you know, my phone is being recorded. If it's not active, certainly it's going in some database somewhere. They can go check it later if they want or something. And I just always assume that I'm being surveilled, scanned, archived, where I'm driving my car and everything. And that's one thing we had on yesterday. Stu Crone is an internet privacy security guy that's been predicting this for years at previous summits. He goes, look, man, I'm the guy that helps develop the stuff to do it. I don't think I know. I know. And there it is. So you always just want to be on guard, but when it becomes inconvenient to people, that's when they complain. When it really affects them personally, and it's affecting them. So they're complaining. They'll be complaining in a big way here next week. We'll talk about it when we come back.